Good morning, all, and welcome into the sanctuary. It is a real joy to be here on this very special day. It's a day that's very near and dear to my heart. I love that we come together on Remembrance Sunday to really allow ourselves to bathe ourselves deeply in the love of all of those loved ones, especially who have crossed over and gone before us into the expanded expression of life and living. We do that here in this way. That's how we celebrate and remember our loved ones who are now not in the form we have known them, but in the energy and the presence that has so expanded that fills us. And the beautiful thought of them as we lean into them in all kinds of times and in all kinds of, especially troubled times, and we get the comfort from that. So it's all about remembering love and its power and its endurance and its eternality, and the wakening up more fully into knowing that when you give love, it's a permanent thing. You don't get to take it back, because if you do, it's not love. The love that we're talking about is, it remains when it's given. It's cosmic, divine love. When Spirit loves into us its own presence in form, it takes up that form, enters into that form, and remains with that form. Never leaves that form. No matter how the form will always keep morphing itself into something more and more and more. It's a beautiful contemplation. So it's a special day for us all. When I woke up this morning, it was still dark and so on, and it was more like at twilight. And then when I raised my head out of my book and looked out the window, the sky was ablaze with light. Beautiful light, light blue, and then at the background, ribbons and ribbons of beautiful rose-colored light and peach-colored light and silver gray light, ribbons and ribbons in the sky. And then a sun shower came, like the love that was raining from the skies. And remember, when you think about your loved ones and you think they're so distant and so far away, whether they're here with us in form but very far away, geographically speaking, or whether they've gone into the next experience of life and living, which means they're very close to us, indeed closer than ever before, because the veil between the two experiences is very thin. And the next world is all around us and about us and above us and below us. And so we're saturated in it. It's a wonderful thing. But remember this, you are 90% starlight. That's what you and I are, 90%. And the sky is big and the sky is vast. And when you look up into the sky and you see those stars twinkling, you know, that's you, that's your loved ones. It's all one great big thing, and there's no distance between starlight and starlight. And there you have it. There's so much for us to know and appreciate and contemplate and comfort ourselves with and lift ourselves up as a consequence of that. So that's what we're here today to do, to celebrate our loved ones who are in greater expanded awareness of themselves now. Can't help but be sad, too, at the same time, which is the human dilemma in a dualistic world. You know, we're human, we're divine, we're human, we're divine. So we're crying on the human side and we're celebrating on the divine side and so on. That's how it is in our experience on this plane. But we're doing it knowing that all is well, no matter what, all is well. And when you get to be in the privileged position of assisting and helping people in their transitions, when that opportunity is available, you get to understand that really and truly life is simply just like, you know, just think of the escalators in the mall. One of them is going up and the other one's coming down. And so souls are leaving their bodies behind and advancing and going into a deeper experience. And other souls are saying, sure, I'll take on a body. So they're coming down and they get ready to come into the dense form on planet Earth. And I love that that's the case. And I think our beloved Joe, who made his transition recently, and his beautiful family is with us today. I mean, in the morning time, he took off for that wonderful adventure of transition into, you know, the the next phase, an expanded awareness of life. And that evening, a grandchild was born into the family. I mean, and that's just how it is. We come and we go, we come and we go, we come and we go. And so when we're looking at all of that, it causes us to think about transitions, doesn't it? Everything is transitioning. If you look at nature, nature is transitioning, cycling all the time. And so are you, and so am I. We all are. And so as I was sharing this morning, with this thing called transition, there's a 3-part thing to it. It's a 3-part cycle, and it's this kind of a cycle. It's not like this. It's this. So here, what have you got? You've got the ending of something. Something has to end for something new to begin. That's the way it is. And there's very, very little difference between beginning and ending. Is it a beginning? Is it an ending? Is it an ending? Is it a beginning? So when this here is ending, it's ending because this here over here is desiring to begin by means of you and through you. But to get from the ending to the beginning, there's this area of transition in the middle. This is the cauldron. This is the crucible, the transitional part of it. And so once we leave and move into the transitional aspect of it, which I call the gap, the vortex that's created for this new thing to happen, then in here you take care of all of the leftover business. You tie up all the loose ends, whether that's doubt or uncertainty or irritation or upsetness or turbulence or truculence or whatever it is. It's going to be different in different transitions. It's going to be more challenging sometimes and not so challenging other times, but there you are. You're in the crucible. You're creating something new and something wonderful. But for that to happen, you have to let go of something else. I mean, 2 things can't occupy the same space at the same time. I mean, you and I can't sit in that chair. I'd have to sit in your lap. And so, one thing has to be emptied for another thing to fill it up. This is what gets us ready here. In many cultures, these are called rites of passage. And I love rites of passage, and I love that whole symbology of that, especially in cultures where they have the rites of passage from childhood into young adulthood and so on. And it's a very special time. So what happens in this time, in this transitional aspect of it? You and I have to kind of extrapolate ourselves, withdraw ourselves from business as usual in the marketplace. And we have to retreat in order to regroup, recover, discover, unfold. And that makes us really firmly fixed in the present, in the here and in the now. Makes us very stunningly present, actually. And you and I are able to stare and look into things that were difficult to look into before. But to face ourselves down. Here I am with myself. Here I am with the image of myself that I'm looking into, an image that is usually false if I'm looking into the human image. And in these ritual times, we're asked to go beyond the image that is false into the true spirit of ourselves. So we go on a spirit quest, so to speak. So what you and I are showing up for is to engage with our true essential self, our essence, our spirit form. And there are lots of wonderful stories about that. When we're through with that, when we've come into that alignment with why we're there, then we're ready to move over and begin the new. We come back from these walkabouts or from going into the forest to seek the Holy Grail. We come back transformed. We come back differently. And what we come back for is to share with the wider community what we have discovered while we were in the crucible, while we were in that vortex of morphing into something more than we were when we went into it. Always we've got to come back and share what we have received. And that's our journey on planet Earth. It's ever been thus. And so this wonderful thing called transitioning out of this body form in this life into my next experience in an expanded life form, All of that is about understanding and realizing now, as I often remind us, there's no such thing as dead people. There are no dead people. There never were any dead people. There's no such thing as this human construct called death. There's transformation, there's transcendence, there is a morphing into something more, but nothing permanent can die. Your stardust, your energy. Energy is indestructible. It cannot die. But it can morph into something else. And that's what moments of transition are about. Taking off and morphing into that something more. And it's always into something more. Those of us who have been privileged to take that wonderful vigil beside somebody who is doing that, experiences it in many ways. Some people go over from the very beginning of their transition, very peacefully, very comfortably, very quietly. Some would go over seemingly like they didn't want to go. They were struggling, they were fighting, they were just hanging on for all their might. Not so. That's just the body doing what the body does and the ego trying to hang on for as long as it can because it's so afraid. But I tell you, in spite of the struggle, in spite of the clenching, in spite of all of that, there comes that moment, and it's when we're finished with the gap, we're just coming out of that, the change occurs. And it may happen like that in an instant, but if you're observing it and you're with it, you see it. There's a whole change. Peace fills the individual. There's a complete sense of peace and readiness, and the transition occurs. Always, no matter what the appearances are beforehand, in those moments, that's what happens. It's a beautiful thing to behold. It's a privilege to behold. So, as Ernest Holmes says, you and I have to get over this morbidity we have around this thing called death. We really have to stop that. And we have to stop scaring ourselves and frightening ourselves and sickening ourselves because we're worried about death. We're worried about something that doesn't exist. There's no such thing. But we are Klingons on three-dimensional planet Earth. The devil we know we think is better than the devil we don't know, so we'll hang on for as long as we can, most of us. And if we only knew, once you get to the other side, you think, oh my God, if I knew it was this good, I would have come over a long time ago. Why didn't somebody tell me? Why didn't somebody push me over? What's the matter with me? And then you say, oh no, there's nothing the matter with me now. That was then. It's a great experience. It's an experience that you and I are born for. It's our final graduation. It means we've done what we're here to do, we've completed our mission, whatever our mission was, and now bye-bye now, see y'all later. And that's a small little snippet of what it really is. It's much more awesome than that. Oh my gosh, I have people, my own friends who have told me. One of my friends who was, she was in the convent. She was a nun once upon a time, as I was once upon a time. And she got swept off her feet by the Greek captain of a ship, of all things, I'm telling you. It was an unbelievable story. Anyway, could hardly speak 2 words of English. But they got married anyway, a wonderful marriage, and she was expecting her first child. And there was a little bit of concern about that because she was considered to be a late vocation to birthing a baby. She was in her 30s. It's common nowadays. But then she was a late vocation. She was 35. And anyway, she was having this baby and everything, and everybody loved Anne. I mean, she's just this beautiful person, and she was having the baby, and the nurses were all delighted and so on. Her time had come, and the pregnancy was good, and it all went well. All of a sudden, she started to hemorrhage, and they thought they were losing her, and she heard it all. I mean, the nurses were starting to cry already. She could hear the nurses upset, and they were crying, and so on and so forth. And she said it was this beautiful rush of powerful energy that she couldn't describe. Although she felt it draining in one sense, she felt an incoming rush of this amazing calm and peace and a sense of something she'd never sensed before. And she said it would have been so easy just to go with it. And then she said, I thought, my God, well, what she thought was, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. He's going to be there with a baby, and he'll not know one end of that baby from the next. He won't know what to do. He can hardly speak 2 words of English. I can't go now. I have to pull myself back. And so she came back from Michael. And but when she describes it, it's awesome. I had another friend who had she responded terribly to some terrible reaction to medication. And as she was waiting for the paramedics to arrive, she said, all this beautiful sense of peace again came over her, and she lost all fear of the thought that I could die now. That went away. It was just beautiful and pleasant, but they got there in time, of course, and pulled her back. And then my friend Harriet, when she was going, it wasn't so easy for her because she was intubated and all of that stuff and couldn't speak, but she could write, and she was truly very conscious and all of that. And at one point she said to her husband, take me off this machine. And he said to her, Harriet, are you sure this is what you want? She writes thicker, take me off this machine. And he says, okay, my darling, if that's what you want, we'll take you off the machine. So they took her off the machine, and she settled down and very quickly became very, very peaceful. And then after a little while, she just raised herself up in the bed like this with a big smile on her face, raised herself up like that. And then very nicely just settled back down in the pillow, and she was gone. Be not afraid. I go before you to prepare a place for you. You can safely follow me. Be not afraid. You're going into something great. You're going into something grand. You're going into something wonderful. And as scary as it seems when we're so attached to this world, when that moment comes for everybody, it's going to be the most glorious and beautiful moment we will ever have known on this plane. And we will be very happy to lift and soar. That's what we're celebrating here today. That's what's ahead of you. That's what's ahead of me. And yes, we will cry and we will weep and we will shed our tears and we will feel sad at the loss of those hugs, that voice, that smile. But we will know beyond that, none of that is lost to us. And those hugs still hold us. And those smiles still are upon us. And those words will always speak in our hearts, because that's love. And so it is.